Welcome back again to Joe Stunner Boxing. There's been a lot of talk over the last few days, and I know a few other YouTube boxing guys have done videos on this, about the possibility of Filip Hrgovic facing Daniel Dubois. Now, for me, this is a case of I'll believe it when I see it, which is not to say it won't happen, of course, because it's quite possible that it could happen. However, I don't really see what Hrgovic gets out of this, to be honest, because he is the mandatory for the IBF title. And to be frank with you, would he risk it against Dubois? Because Dubois is relatively high risk, low reward. 2 fights ago, Dubois, as we know, was knocked out by Alexander Usyk, and there was that rather sort of fake controversy souped up by Frank Warren, low blow controversy, all this blah, 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 blah. Well, that was one punch in a whole fight, and Dubois unravelled alarmingly against Usyk. Now, he did, to some extent, redeem himself against Big Baby Miller, although you have to put that into perspective because Big Baby Miller, one assumes, was not on anything. Certainly his physique suggested that all that fake muscle, all that PED muscle had turned to flab. But nevertheless, he does have a good gas tank. He is a big, big unit, 330 pounds or whatever he was. And in those middle rounds, 4 or 5 rounds into the fight, you were getting the feeling that Dubois was in danger of unravelling. And he didn't. He hung tough, went back to the corner. He's got Don Charles in his corner, who's a very good sort of father figure. Plays the psychological game with Daniel quite well. And Daniel actually, I think, really answered a few questions about his heart and his determination, because he came through a few rough patches against Miller. So, when he stopped Miller in the final round, of course, with only a few seconds to go. So, we know that Daniel hits hard. But at the same time, there were still question marks over him. He's still a young man. I like Daniel Dubois. I've got a lot of time for him. I hope he does well. I hope he maximises his talent and makes even more money, because I'm sure he got well paid over in Saudi. But Hrgovic is, although he's not ancient for a heavyweight, he's not in his 20s, in his 30s now. And he's got that IBF mandatory position. And if he takes on a hard puncher like Dubois, and let's say he knocks out Dubois, okay, yeah, that would look pretty good on his record. It would certainly consolidate his right to a heavyweight title shot, whether it's for the vacant IBF belt or whether it's against the winner of Usyk Fury or whatever, because they're talking about the vacant IBF belt. If after the first fight, the first Usyk Fury fight, they got a 2-fight deal. If they move to the second fight, the IBF are going to strip the winner, and initially it was going to be Hrgovic and Joshua were going to fight for it. That was the mode of thinking. So he wants to preserve that IBF mandatory status, understandably so. He beat Zhang to get it, and he's been kind of sitting on it, hasn't it? Because he had that absolute gimme against Mark Dumoret. I mean, I can't be the only person who won money on a first-round knockout for Filip Hrgovic against Mark Dumoret. I've always thought that Hrgovic is somewhat overrated. I used to think, well, the jury's still out. But no, the jury's in as far as I'm concerned. And I think he is overrated. That's not to say he's not good. Just because you're overrated, you can still be good. Would I make him a favourite against Dubois? Probably. But it is a winnable fight for Dubois. But like I say, Dubois, 2 fights ago, got knocked out. Came back with a decent win against Miller. Although, again, we have to put it into perspective. Miller being what he is. So even if he was knocked out by Hrgovic, would Hrgovic get a lot of credit for that? Probably a reasonable amount. But if you compare that to what Dubois would get for beating Hrgovic, I think definitely that would pay real dividends for Dubois. He would definitely have made a complete comeback from those 2 defeats where he quit, initially against Joe Joyce, which I'll never blamed him for that. He had a busted eye socket. Sometimes it's better to live to fight another day, to err on the side of caution. He could have lost the sight in one eye if he'd continued. No problem with that. I think the Usyk fight was... He seemed to mentally unravel, like he didn't really know what to do. And it looked to me like a complete lack of experience and possibly a bit of self-belief. But he's been with Don Charles a while now, and they're kind of working on that, and the confidence is building. So, yeah, it is feasible he could beat Filip Hrgovic. And if he did, I think he would sort of gate crash the upper echelons of the heavyweight division. And it would be a victory that no one could sort of push to one side or poo-poo or sort of say, you know, that's nothing. No, you've just beaten Filip Hrgovic, undefeated, IBF mandatory. So I think there's a lot to be gained from that matchup for Dubois, but relatively little for Hrgovic, which is why I don't really see it happening unless the excellent Turkey decides, I want this fight, and starts throwing untold millions at him. In which case Hrgovic will think, go on in, I can beat Dubois. You're going to pay me 20 million or whatever, I don't know, whatever figure you want to pull out of your backside. Yeah, I'll fight him. No problem. Because I can beat him anyway, and I'll retain my IBF title, my IBF mandatory status, and I'll be X millions richer. So there is that possibility. But if you put a gun to my head, do I think it will happen? Apart from that little caveat, that little asterisk regarding Turkey Al Sheikh's money, no, I don't see it happening. But, obviously stranger things have happened. I mean, Christ, Fury versus Ngannou versus Joshua, to name but two recent ones, are very, very odd matchups, but they were successful, commercially successful. So, yeah, it's possible. What do you think? Do you think that Hrgovic versus Dubois is an interesting matchup, is a good matchup? Do you think it would be an entertaining fight? What do you think the odds are of it being signed and sealed? If so, who would you pick to win? And by what margin? Would you make one guy a real strong favourite? Would you be amazed if the other guy won? Or do you think it's a relatively close fight? Or, at the moment, I would make that off the top of my head, probably at least 65-35 in favour of Hrgovic. That would be my gut reaction. I'd have to have a think about it, have a look at their respective records and performances and break it down a little bit more, but I definitely make Hrgovic the favourite. But let me know what you think. And of course, leave your comments below. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Please hit the like button. Spread the word about Joe Steiner Boxing. I always appreciate that. I'm looking forward to reading your comments, as always. And I will catch you later. Bye for now.